21st. I want to issue a warm welcome to everyone who's come down to be with us in the chambers here this evening, and also folks who are watching remotely. Appreciate your participation. So I'm officially calling this meeting of the Kalamazoo City Commission to order. First item of business, Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Decker.
Present.
Commissioner Hess.
Present.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Present.
Commissioner Juarez.
Present.
Commissioner Pradel.
Present.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Present.
Mayor Anderson.
Here. Thank you, Clerk Borling. So I just want to remind everybody, due to the times we're in, is that masks should be worn in the City Hall and City Commission chambers. In addition, attendees should take note of the reserved seat signs that are in place to create some social distancing. Your cooperation and compliance with these rules is appreciated. And we are honored tonight for our opening ceremony to have Chaplain Marcus Mays here from the Kalamazoo Metro Transit to provide our invocation. Please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Our precious Father who lives in heaven, how precious is your name, the name above all names. As an intercessor, I come before the courts of heaven to intercede on behalf of the city officials governing the city of Kalamazoo, Michigan. Let your kingdom come and your will be done over the city of Kalamazoo. Let your kingdom come and your will be done over this governing body, Mayor Anderson, the city commissioners, Don Cooney, Stephanie Hoffman, Esteban Juarez, Kiana Decker, Janine Haas, Chris Pradel, and their support staff. Let your kingdom come and your will be done over the city managers, the legislators, and the attorneys. And let your kingdom come and your will be done over the law enforcement, the fire and rescue services, first responders, and utility management. And most importantly, let your kingdom come and your will be done over the citizens of the city of Kalamazoo. Give each council member this day their daily bread, that portion of you, so that they will have the wisdom, the knowledge, and the understanding to govern this jurisdiction fairly and without prejudice, and govern in truth. Forgive them their trespasses, their debts as they forgive those who they have debted to. Lead them not into temptation. Let the decision that comes out of their mouths be above reproach, not of selfish gain, not influenced by evil desires or vindication against anyone or anything, or from anyone or anything, but deliver this counsel from those who would do them harm or destruction. Keep them safe, Lord, under your mighty hand. Protect them and this fair city. For yours is the kingdom, and Kalamazoo is part of your kingdom, and the power and the glory forever and ever. In the name above all names, Jesus Christ. Amen.
I want to thank Chaplain Mays for honoring us with your presence tonight. Thank you so much. Starting off here, we have a proclamation. It's going to be read by Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello. Today we have Ryan Weber, Kevin King, and Karen Trout. State of Michigan, United States of America Proclamation, celebrating the 20th anniversary of Reading Together. Whereas, Kalamazoo Public Library signature One Book, One City program began in 2003 in partnership with the Better Together initiative at the Kalamazoo Community Foundation. The first title announced was Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. Since then, a different book, or sometimes more than one, has been chosen every year. And whereas the program began with a vision of gathering people from all walks of life, of all ages, and educational levels in libraries, homes, workplaces, community centers, and coffee shops to discuss issues raised by a book they have all read. And whereas in the 20 years of the program's existence, over 20 books by 20 different authors have been featured as a reading together titles, with 15 of the authors coming to Kalamazoo for a live presentation. And whereas the breadth of themes of the selected titles has led to exploration by the Kalamazoo community of several important issues, including poverty, police brutality, immigration, food security, and a myriad of social justice issues, including race, religion, gender, and so much more. And whereas organized book discussions and local events planned in partnership with neighboring libraries, educational institutions, nonprofit organizations, and businesses provided opportunities for conversations and deeper understanding of the world through reading. And whereas over 40,000 participants have attended various Reading Together events since the program began 20 years ago and since its inception. The program has continued to bring the Kalamazoo community together through the shared experience of reading the same book. Now, therefore, I, Kiana Decker, on behalf of the 54th City Commission and David F. Anderson, Mayor of the City of Kalamazoo, do hereby honor and recognize the 20th anniversary of Reading Together and urge the community to join us in celebrating this program's success.
Commissioners, Mayor, Commissioner Decker, thank you so much on behalf of the Public Library. My name is Ryan Weber, I'm Director, and I have with me again tonight Karen Trout, who is our Community Engagement Librarian, and Kevin King, who is our Head of Community Engagement. And I don't have a speech, and I don't think it could have been done any better than how it was read and the words that were read by Commissioner Decker. 40,000 people have attended programs over 20 years. That's incredible. And that just shows you the impact that a book club, a reading together, community read, how that has an effect on a community, a great community like Kalamazoo. 20 years is significant, and we appreciate the support of the city and of the residents. And we've got a good one again this year. And I'm going to turn it over to Karen Trout, who will promo some of the events.
I add my thank you for the recognition from the city. I have some brochures with me today that I will bring over to the clerk to make sure you're aware of the events that are coming up. Mostly, we've had a couple that have happened already, but throughout the month of March, we'll be celebrating the book, The Best We Could Do, by Vietnamese-American author T. Bui. And there will be several events taking place, as I said, in March, and they're all listed in here. Unfortunately, they will be online. We had hoped to bring the author to Chenery, and that's on March 22nd, but she will be joining us online and all of the other programs as well. So I encourage you to take a look at that and join us. We have lots of copies of the book if you want to come and check them out. And thank you again for the recognition.
Thank you very much. Appreciate our strong community partners, not only doing this work together in the community, but just right down the street. So thank you for coming to our meeting tonight, and keep up the good work. Thank you. So commissioners, you have before you the agenda for tonight's meeting. There are two requested changes to the agenda from staff. One, a request to add a cost share agreement with the City of Portage for water main replacement on Lover's Lane, and approval of appointments and reappointments I have made to boards and commissions. Are there any objections to adding these items to the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, are there any other changes commissioners would like to see? Commissioner Pradle.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was wondering if we could move on item number 4, G4, on the consent agenda to the regular agenda.
So that is the item related to the ordinance on the soil erosion and sediment control,
Yeah, just to get a little background on
right?
that.
Off the consent into regular agenda. Anything else from commission? All right, seeing none, is there anyone in the audience sure to speak on an item on the consent agenda? If you would like to have that moved, please let us know at this time. Seeing no one, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, have we heard anything from the public about moving any items?
We have not.
Thank you, DCM Chamberlain. Next item, communications. City Manager Ritzma.
Thank you, Mayor Anderson, and I'd like to ask that Jane Ghosh come forward. She is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Discover Kalamazoo, and she's going to provide us a presentation on Discover Kalamazoo and what they do and the value they bring to our region.
Great.
Jane?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for welcoming me. I'm delighted to be here. I joined Discover Kalamazoo in December of 2020. And so I know that you have not had anyone come to present to you from Discover Kalamazoo for over a year, and I thought it would be a great time to update you on what's going on, since there's some very exciting things happening in our community. So the topics for today are, I'm going to tell you what Discover Kalamazoo is, and we have new information about our visitors, who they are and where they go when they're here. I'm going to share with you some upcoming big events, and then take you through our strategies to continue to grow visitor spending and have the economic impact in Kalamazoo County. So who Discover Kalamazoo is? We are the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We're also known as a destination marketing organization for Kalamazoo County. So we support the county as a whole. And our job is to market Kalamazoo County and all the places within it as a destination for leisure travelers, for meetings, and for events. So that's what we do. We are very focused on marketing to people outside the county to encourage them to come. Our mission is to be the inspiration that encourages visitors and residents to discover Kalamazoo, and we want to share Kalamazoo with everyone. So we start with our values. These are the Discover Kalamazoo values. The first, we are your ambassadors. We are outstanding ambassadors for Kalamazoo in all that we do. Every one of our team, we're passionately proud of our community, and we represent it with excellence. We embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're absolutely committed to equity because we know that that's the foundation of diversity and inclusion. It has to start with the equity. And we know that we can't be outstanding ambassadors of the community without this. And this is a growth area for us, and we have lots of initiatives going to help increase the diversity of the visitors that we attract here to Kalamazoo. Next is we exude contagious positivity. We couldn't be outstanding ambassadors without positivity. Our cups are always half full. We love our community, and we assume positive intent, and we assume that you do too. And we have a growth mindset. We are always trying new things. Some of the things I'm going to talk to you about today may work, some may not, but we're going to learn from them, and we're going to move forward, and we're going to be better as a result. We're not afraid to fail. And lastly, we act with integrity and empathy, as you would expect us to do as representatives of your community. So why does the county have an organization like Discover Kalamazoo? It's because visitor spending is critical to the county. So pre-pandemic in 2019, visitor spending contributed over $500 million to Kalamazoo County. And actually, lodging, which you think about as visitors staying in hotels, lodging was less than a quarter of that. So when visitors come to Kalamazoo County, the economic impact is not just on hotels, it's on restaurants, it's on retail shops, it's on wonderful attractions, and all of those mean opportunities for employment, opportunities for entrepreneurship, helping grow wages as demand increases. So that's why we're here. We have, because of visitor spending, that results in more than 7,500 direct jobs, actually directly employed by the visitor spending, and then 11,000 indirect jobs. Obviously, we had a significant hit during the pandemic to revenue. Discover Kalamazoo is funded by the accommodations tax that's collected on Kalamazoo County lodging properties. And we had a significant hit to our revenue The good news is, as we look in 2021, around the summer, we started to come out of it. So since about the summer of 2021, Kalamazoo has definitely been, on the rebound in terms of hotel accommodations tax. Go to the next slide, please. So what are we doing with that revenue, and how are we focusing it to make sure that, with the significant deficit that we've had, we want to spend every dollar as wisely as possible? The first is, some of what we do is we do community sponsorships. We're making those sponsorship dollars work as hard as possible to attract visitors on the leisure side. So I just give you an example. We are now the sponsor of the email that Western sends out to people about the upcoming athletic events. And as you see on the bottom there, if you're going to come for a game, for example, a phenomenal hockey game where the top 5 team wins, that we say, while you're here, here's other things you can do in Kalamazoo when you're having your visit. Hopefully to encourage them to come and maybe extend their stay in the way that they might spend money while they're here. The second is that we're adding paid search. So in 2021, for the first time, Discover Kalamazoo had a concentrated, paid search program. So this is just an example. You wouldn't see this because we don't spend money within the county, right? You'd have to be about 50 miles away to start to see some of our ads. That's where our spending is going. So we have paid search if you're looking for a place to go. Next, please. And then a significant increase of our digital advertising into our drive market. So we're much more focused now. We've really identified a target market where we're spending our money to be as effective as possible. That's all on the leisure side. And then if you could go on, we're very proud of what we've accomplished. We've actually had the best pandemic recovery of all of these markets that we measure. So this is through Smith Travel Research that they aggregate hotel room night across the country, actually internationally. But pretty much for every market across the country, they have data on how many room nights of hotels have been sold. And this compares the total room nights for 2021 versus 2020 and the growth. And actually, Discover Kalamazoo's had the best growth in 2020 versus 2021 over 2020. So we are working hard to get out there and bring additional visitors in for you, for us, for all of us. And what that means is we've actually had, I already showed you that the first half wasn't as good. The great news is in the back half, we've set records. We've had the best hotel room night demand in the county since we've started measuring in 2009, as far back as our data goes. So things are going well. We're bringing visitors in, and hopefully, your constituents are seeing the economic impact of that. So these visitors, who are they? And we've started to buy geolocation data. So if you have cell phones and your location tracking is enabled, maybe it's only enabled sometimes, maybe it's enabled all the time. There are companies that buy up that data and then resell them to organizations like Discover Kalamazoo so we can get information about our visitors. And if you could go to the next slide. How do we define a visitor? That's someone who has stayed in Kalamazoo for at least 4 hours, but less than 2 weeks. We're not trying to measure, for example, students. They come from at least 50 miles away, so we know they're really a visitor and not just someone commuting. That they have their device on, so we can tell where they're going. And they make fewer than 10 trips a year. We don't want to get maybe delivery drivers who might have us, on their route, and they can't be, residents of Kalamazoo County. So that's the definition of a visitor. And what we know about them is when they come, they stay an average of 1.7 days. So we do get a lot of overnights. We have data going back to January of 2019. The average visitor has come 2.6 times. So we get a lot of repeat. They tend to stay overnight. More than half the time. Not always. I mean, it's different from a visitor to, say, Orlando, because we're that drive market. They tend to stay overnight. More than half come from out of state. We have very few international visitors here in Kalamazoo. And that, we think, is one of the reasons we've done a good job recovering from the pandemic so quickly, because we weren't reliant on those overseas visitors, the big business conventions that maybe like a Chicago and a Detroit might have had. And they mostly come from within driving distance. So this, you can see of all these people, the number one place they came from was Detroit, and then Chicago, and then Lansing. You can see all these cities, mostly, from a drive away. The number one reason people come is to see friends and family, and people don't go too far from Kalamazoo. Okay. So a little bit about their demographics. Compared to Michigan residents as a whole, our visitors tend to be a little bit younger. So we over-index on visitors 18 to 24, 45 to 54. We under-index on 55-plus visitors. So Kalamazoo County, we tend to get a little bit younger visitors, a little bit more highly educated, so people who have at least a college degree is where we over-index, and a little bit lower income, and we over-index on Hispanic visitors. So if you think about especially those first three things, a little bit younger, a little bit more highly educated, a little lower income, we get a lot of visitors who what we would call kind of pre-family versus, say, a post family. If you go farther west in the state, you get people who maybe are empty nesters. You get people who are maybe a little bit pre-family, and that seems to be our sweet spot. And they are also, our data would say, are the folks who are most responsive to our advertising. So we use that information to target our advertising, even more. Okay? And when they come, now we know where they go. So these are the top 10 destinations. When they come to Kalamazoo County, where are they going? Number one, far and away, is our lovely downtown. So downtown is a huge draw for our visitors, not just our leisure visitors, but when we have events coming to Kalamazoo, we absolutely take these media organizers, when we're trying to convince them to hold their event in Kalamazoo, we take them downtown because downtown sells itself. We have such a wonderful downtown, and it's really important to us to continue to have a vibrant downtown. Second biggest draw for us is Western. So Western Michigan University Sports, the rest of the campus, they're a big draw of visitors here to Kalamazoo. Kalamazoo College is not that far behind, but we're very fortunate to have those educations of higher learning here in our community. And then wanted to tell you big events that we have coming up. So again, it's not just leisure. We have other, we host other things too. And this one in particular, I wanted to let you know, the Hirowara Te Otoku is a book that was written by a Japanese author, an autobiography, who happens to also to be an actor. And he had a brother who was from Kalamazoo. I'm not going to spoil, it's kind of a long story, but they are turning that Japanese book into a miniseries in Japan, and that is starting to film. Actually, the crew is here scouting locations this week. They'll be here for about 6 weeks filming, largely in the Vine Street neighborhood. That's actually where the protagonist was spent a lot of his life, was there in the Vine Street neighborhood. So if you see film crews around, and that's what that's all about, and we're very honored to have that. That'll have about $195,000 of economic impact just because of the people staying here, for that 6-week period. I'm very optimistic that when the drama is shown overseas, that could actually attract additional visitors here to Kalamazoo. Okay. And then we are also, we do this every year, most years, host the Mid-America Model United Nations, so we're going to have great students coming here for Model UN. That's about $360,000 of economic impact. Next. We do a lot of wrestling events. So wrestling, we way over-index on wrestling events. And we have the My Way wrestling community coming in for individual state finals. That's $3.5 million of economic impact because of the number of students that are going to be coming in for those. And that's held at Wings Event Center. And then speaking of Wings Event Center, we're also hosting the national championship for Tier 2 U14 boys hockey. So there's 44 teams coming from around the country here to Kalamazoo to compete. And these are, phenomenal hockey players. There'll be good hockey to be seen at Wings Event Center coming up in March. And that is about $1.9 million of economic impact. And then also, we're hosting the national championships of collegiate roller hockey. It's a club sport at Western. And thanks to our relationship with the Western Club Sports, they are bringing that in, and we're going to host that. It's about $400,000 of economic impact. And then dog shows are coming back. So this is something that, I don't know if you know, we have a lot of dog shows here in Kalamazoo. We're actually the home of the United Kennel Club. This is an American Kennel Club show that's going to be held at the Expo Center, about $300,000 of economic impact. And then I wanted to make sure that you all know, I mentioned this when I was here a couple weeks ago, please save the date, April 12th, 7 p.m. at Bell's, by invitation only. It's a 30-minute TV show. This will be the world premiere of this TV show that was filmed about Kalamazoo. It's a travel show. It'll actually air on that Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. But I talked to the producers, and I mentioned I was going to be here, and I asked, could you give me a little sneak preview? And I'm not sure if you all can see screens. Can you? You can. Great. So I asked for a sneak preview, and they gave me this.
On these main streets.
First of all, we walked in and all I really wanted to talk about is this.
We do truffles, caramels covered in chocolate. We do chocolate covered fruit. We do chocolate bars. We do chocolate barks and chocolate covered nuts. And
It's all about chocolate.
yeah,
Yeah. Has chocolate always been your business?
not at all.
Not at
no.
all. What?
I started working counseling young people who were court involved,
Okay.
who had to get counseling as a part of their probation requirement. And it wasn't long into doing that that I saw how few of those kids were going to be able to change the course of their lives. You're 15 or 16 and have a couple of felonies on your record. Super hard to make a real life for yourself.
Yeah.
So I opened up this chocolate shop to provide employment opportunities for young people with felony records and other barriers to employment.
Oh, nice.
And there's a play on words, confections with
Oh,
convictions.
sure.
It's kids who have records. Actually, it should have been confections with adjudications, but it doesn't have quite the same word.
It'd be like, what?
Yeah.
So that's just one of the many places that they went and filmed. And as I say, on April 12th, we'll be doing a preview event at Bell's by invitation only. You will all be invited, and I hope you can join us for that event. Okay. And then lastly, our strategies to grow visitor spending. So we have 5 strategies. If you could go to the next slide. Our overall objective, and you've got this in your handout, our objective is to get visitor spending back to the pre-pandemic levels as quickly as we possibly can. So we set out for 2023. At the time we wrote this, it was expected that the country as a whole would not recover until 2024. So we wanted to be, what could we do to accelerate faster than the country as a whole? Hopefully, maybe we can even achieve that in 22. I don't know. We're going to work hard for it. But the first is we want to win that low-key casual road trip. That is our sweet spot, and that is where we're spending a lot of our time and effort just in that target market to win that trip. I'm just back I spent the last 3 days actually, in Chicago at the Chicago Travel and Adventure Show, manning a booth and stopping people as they were walking by and telling them why they should take their vacations here, in Kalamazoo. So just to get people who are looking for a place to go, tell them we're 2.5 hours away, we're a great visit, there's so many things to do. Kalamazoo has so many things to market, it certainly makes our jobs easier. The second is then to leverage events to drive incremental leisure visits. We have trip-worthy events happening here all the time. The Gilmore Piano Festival, I think, is a great example. That's coming up at the end of April, beginning of May. That's absolutely worth scheduling a trip to see Herbie Hancock and Pink Martini and all these wonderful artists that'll be there. The USTA, Boys Nationals, that's top-class tennis, and that's worth scheduling an event behind. So we are now partnering with the organizer of these events, the Gilmore Piano Festival, and we're coordinating with them to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts, but we're complementing efforts to leverage their activities to drive incremental trips. We have great sporting venues here. We're maximizing them, as you can see, like with the roller hockey, for example, getting creative. Like, what can you do on an arena-sized floor? You don't have to do just hockey. You can do wrestling. You can do roller hockey. You can do roller derby, all kinds of things. And then we are seeking to secure repeatable, profitable hobby and association events. We do very well with certain hobby events. The Street Rods, the National Street Rods Association. You see them come every September. The dog shows. The medieval conference that Western hosts. We do these events that happen year in, year out, or we're on rotation every few years. They work very well to bring visitors and to get visitors to want to come back to Kalamazoo. And then lastly, figure out where is additional growth that we could have, and then what facilities do we need to fill them up. And underpinning all of that is, partner alignment and relationships, thought leadership, especially, and you'll have seen in several of these pillars, diversity. We're thinking each of my meetings teams, my sport team, they have specific goals around how do we increase the diversity of the events that we attract here to Kalamazoo, because we know that that's important in our mission as outstanding ambassadors. And that is all I have for you today. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you very much for coming here and visiting us this evening. Jane Ghosh, I really appreciate it. We appreciate your energy and your passion for this work. Although it wasn't planned out, does anyone have any specific questions at this point?
Dave.
Commissioner Hess.
As the City Commission liaison to Discover Kalamazoo, I've seen Jane in action and on several occasions, and thank you for doing what you do. We appreciate you being here and doing the good work for the people of Kalamazoo. I was going to put in my comments tonight about the COHA, the 14U event that's going to be here. That's 40 teams that are going to be within and throughout Kalamazoo for how long? For
about a week.
week.
Yeah, and we've got four more teams signed up since we had our last meeting. So
oh my gosh, so
44
44 teams.
Yeah.
And then almost $2 million coming into our economy from that event. It's just wonderful. And then I was going to mention the Gilmore, so thank you for doing that. And if you don't have your tickets yet for Herbie Hancock, you might want to get online and get those. But thank you for everything you do to champion Kalamazoo.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the time.
All right, next on our agenda is the opportunity for general public comments. Speakers will each have 3 minutes for their comments. We'll start with in-person speakers and then go to any call-in speakers. People who want to offer comments via phone should call 888-382-9556, starting now. through the end of the public comment period. Is there anyone in the audience wanting to address the City Commission? If so, please come forward to the podium, state your name and whether you live in the city.
About riding with my children on those streets when we were in quarantine and home from schools. In the last 2 weeks, I'd seen a car come down the Inkster Bridge Hill, speed past us on Inkster at probably 50 miles an hour, run the stop sign at Spring Hill without even touching the brakes. I've had a car come around the corner at Alta Vista and Wilshire across the center line, slam on their brakes, squealing their tires to avoid us. And I've had drivers come up behind a group of kids I've riding with and honk angrily with us, causing one of the young children to fall off their bike, and the driver didn't bother to roll down the window to ask if the kid was okay. My son is a good biker, but I don't feel safe allowing him to ride around the block without an adult because I'm afraid a speeding driver will run a stop or won't see him coming around a corner. There are more kids playing outside in my neighborhood right now than there have been for the last 30 years. I'd love to be a part of a conversation about what we can do to make some of these streets safer for users other than cars. Thanks for your consideration. So I sent that letter in June of 2020. And I think some of my neighbors also sent similar communications at about the same time. This led to a traffic calming initiative from the city for the neighborhood. There were flyers that were circulated. There was a survey that went out. People provided feedback to the city. That traffic calming initiative was not implemented in part because there was political pushback, but also because the bridge was closed in May of 2021 for safety reasons. So it turns out when the bridge is closed, there's no reason to have traffic calming because there's no traffic that crosses the bridge. So imagine my excitement to be invited to a city meeting to view plans for a new bridge last week. And imagine how that excitement turned to confusion when we learned that the proposed plans are to build a high-speed traffic deck with 2 lanes of car traffic without any elements to mitigate the impact of traffic returning to the neighborhood. Now, if you look at the Imagine Kalamazoo website, there are 5 separate initiatives related to traffic calming right now. There's 2 others related to having safe routes to schools or non-motorized users. I submit to you that the plans as they stand today are out of step with the needs of the neighborhood and with the priorities of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, please.
I think that's a good point. I heard Rebecca Kick talk at the last meeting about how excited she was that community members wanted to be involved, and they asked if they could get on a committee of the whole meeting, and she said, yeah, we can do that. And then I asked, how do I do that? It's not something I can do. If you're good friends with Gene Hess, maybe you can. I'm not sure what it takes. But I think that's a really good point that the last person brought up. Imagine Kalamazoo was one of the biggest opportunities that you guys had to communicate with citizens. I'm on one of your boards, and we talk about some really interesting things. But one of the things that I noticed that got brought up we ran our own survey in parks. And then Imagine Kalamazoo had their own survey, and in both of those surveys, it got brought up a lot. Community gardens, it got brought up a whole bunch. Rebecca Kick, again, she's on the Land Bank Authority Board, and they used to have a program called Adopt a Lot, where you could spend, I don't remember if it was $20 or $100. It was very reasonable, and you can adopt an entire lot for an entire year. And I think they'd probably even waive the fee sometimes under certain circumstances, I don't know. But that program's been dissolved, and that was the biggest way that people did community gardens. And I've brought up, as a board member, to the board that I'm on, that ran its own survey, the biggest thing that I saw that was brought up was community gardens and food forests. Maybe it's not the most important thing that we have to deal with, like deer, it's not the most important thing, but it gets brought up a lot. And when I, as a citizen, tried, I didn't tell people my name, I just called and said, hey, I want to do a community garden, how do I do that? There was no communication back. It was just dead ends, constantly, dead ends, nothing, nowhere. I'm sure if David Anderson or Gene Hess was like, hi, I'm David Anderson, I'm the mayor of Kalamazoo, and I want to have a community garden, there would be resources, there would be opportunities. And I don't think that's bad, but when it's one of the most popular things brought up in your community outreach, Imagine Kalamazoo, a lot of people want that. And then when someone goes out of their way to say, hey, how do I do this? Nothing. How do we improve communication? How do people give feedback that's not just, I'm a thorn in your side, but like, hey, I think this is really important. I think people want to do it. How do we get to that point? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hello, my name is Megan. I am the environmental engineer for Bell's Brewery. So I just wanted to follow up. Thank you again for allowing me to comment on their proposed wastewater billing changes on behalf of Bell's Brewery. Bell's Brewery would like to express our support for the newly revised billing structure as proposed by the city's Department of Environmental Services regarding wastewater surcharge billing. Particularly allowing businesses to opt out of the shared program and return to a monthly billing empowers business to take advantage of wastewater efficiency projects, and in the case of Bell's Brewery, actively pursue reductions in greenhouse gas emissions from our operations. The ability to opt in or out of that shared program allows businesses to consider all the factors that contribute to the immediate and long-term health of their business and select a billing structure that facilitates their long-term success. That will be to the benefit of not only Bell's Brewery, but all businesses serviced by the city's Department of Environmental Services. We at Bell's look forward to continuing to work with the city to ensure the long-term success of our business, community, and civil infrastructure that supports both. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to comment?
Hello, Council, City Commissioners, and David, and all the other people up there in front. I'm here to speak for the mission. We put up a new building recently, and I've heard that they can house maybe another 200 people. Well, there are about 250 homeless in Kalamazoo, I've been told. Maybe we could do something about those last 50. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment?
Good evening. Bill Reeves, a Kalamazoo resident for 50 some odd years now. So I see the audio in the chamber hasn't gotten any better because I couldn't hear a single solitary word anybody else said except by listening in online. That's kind of frustrating. And Ben's mind's about to be blown. I agree with him on about a good 99% of what he said. Communication and transparency. So in the vein of transparency, 10 years approximately or so ago, KDPS did a profiling study on traffic stop data study and showed a lot of racial profiling issues in the city. We were supposed to get an update a new study done within a couple of years, according to the chief of police at the time, Chief Hadley. We have not had an update since. I've heard a lot of excuses, some valid, some not so much. I get it. COVID came along. When the zombie apocalypse hits, things go sideways. Excuse me. But since then, though, I've heard from the city manager's office itself that KDPS is choosing who is going to do the study, the methodology, etc. Now, maybe that's okay with you guys, but the people I know, the people that have been affected by previous bad behavior, and some of you heard me say this, and I'll say it here publicly now, I have more trust in Chief Coakley than I've had in any chief in my 51 years of living here. So this isn't a slam on the chief. It's not even really a slam on the department. It's the process. And so if you're going to have people who are they're setting it up for failure already, because there's going to be no ability to trust what the outcome is for the people who have been harmed in this community by their behavior in the past. So whether you pro-police, anti-police, whatever, we want to have real facts without it being colored in the meantime. There are other ways to go about this than just having KDPS cherry pick who it's going to be, how it's going to be done. And yes, I know all about how Lambert went out of business and all the other stuff. I've been following this a lot longer than most of any of you. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Jeff Messer, city resident. I would like to welcome City Clerk Scott Borling back to the dais. He's been away for about a month due to illness, and that's convenient because I have 3 issues regarding the agenda procedures to make note of. First, I would like to thank city staff for tonight's business meeting agenda for adding the last-minute additions to the agenda, the proposed last-minute additions to the agenda under item C. I've been attending and participating in these meetings for almost 10 years now, and I've never seen that, and that's an improvement to have it in writing, opposed to what we had about three meetings ago, where there were 2 last-minute changes added to the agenda. At least they were mentioned during the committee of the whole meeting, and that's a big improvement over last term when Erin Knott sat silent for the entire committee of the whole meeting, and then when we got to item C at the business meeting, she surprised everyone with a consequential last-minute addition to the agenda. So I would like to thank this improvement. But there's one improvement further that I mentioned at the first meeting in November 2019, and that is to restore the Wednesday draft agendas. Currently, the agenda packets are made available to the public around 5 p.m. on Friday, but it used to be there was a Wednesday draft. Now, seeing that staff is able to add last-minute additions to the printed agenda, I think they've demonstrated the ability to restore the Wednesday draft agendas. You can go back to the meeting video from the third Monday in November 2019 and hear what I said then. But Clerk Borling said that it wasn't a lot of work for him to reestablish the Wednesday draft agenda, so I would appreciate that. The 2 other items are kind of minor, but I didn't get to talk to Scott before the meeting, so I'll bring them up now. First is that we've had some issues because of the changes to the agenda packets during the pandemic, is that on the printed agenda, the consent agenda items are G, but the actual agenda reports say F. So Scott, if you could please correct the agenda packet reports so that they are consistent with the printed agenda. That was a problem a couple meetings ago where someone asked for like F whatever to be taken off the agenda, then the mayor had to say, oh, you mean G whatever. And then the third item is the least minor. The committee of the whole meeting agendas say that those meetings are being held in the community room, and those are being held in city commission chambers. So Scott, those two things for you to fix, and please, Mayor, recommend a return to the Wednesday draft agendas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the chambers who wants to make a comment here this evening? Seeing no one else, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, do we have any comments that people have called in?
Okay, Mr. Mayor, we'll go ahead and check.
No one else, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, do we have?
Okay, caller ending in 1281.
Mr. Mayor, we'll go ahead and
Live
check.
at the commission.
No one else, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, do we have? Okay, caller ending in 1281.
Caller
Mr. Mayor, we'll go ahead and check.
1281. Can you please go ahead and speak into your telephone?
Hi, Commission. Thank you. My name is Carrie Junker. I am the Executive Vice President at Bell's Brewery. Sorry I could not be in person with you this evening. I'd first like to thank the committee for providing an opportunity to represent the interests of Bell's Brewery this evening, and to Ms. Kaiser, who spoke earlier, and her subject matter expertise and advocacy on Bell's behalf in this matter. I'd like to reiterate Bell's support for the newly revised billing structure. And finally, and most importantly, I want to recognize this committee and the city's Department of Environmental Services for hearing our concerns, being responsive to the issues raised, and developing a pragmatic response. I and the leadership of Bell's have been encouraged by how this issue was resolved. Now, more than ever, we must be deliberate about how our community and businesses grow. A collaborative relationship between government and business will be essential to growing in ways that do not perpetuate irreversible climate change and increase equitable access to opportunities for all at both Bell's Brewery and the larger community in Southwest Michigan. I and Bell's Brewery look forward to continuing this collaborative dynamic in the future. Thank you for your time this evening, Commissioners.
Okay, we'll just wait a little bit, see if anybody else calls in, because we have a little bit of a lag with Facebook and YouTube. Mr. Mayor, I think that's the last call.
All right, thank you, DCM Chamberlain, I appreciate that. I do want to thank everyone who took the time and made the effort to either attend this meeting in person and provide us with your comments, or to call in. Thank you very much. Now we are down to our consent agenda. City Manager Ritzma.
Thank you, Your Honor. We've got several items this evening for approval. First is the approval of a one-year contract with Kindle Electric Incorporated for inventory and non-inventory electrical supplies in the amount of $112,094.47. Next is the approval of a professional service agreement with the Peerless Midwest Company to perform well rehabilitation and associated maintenance in 2022 in the amount of $163,100. Next, the approval of a sole source purchase with Ferguson Waterworks to provide Neptune water meters in the amount of $700,000. Next, the approval of the use of $10,000 from the City Commission Initiatives budget to expand the annual Shop with the Senior program within the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety. Next is the approval and acceptance of easement agreements with Humphrey Products and Kindle Electric for water main being installed as part of the Abbey Farms development project. Next is the approval and acceptance of easement agreements with Mystic Trails LLC and Gensco Properties LLC for water main installed as part of the Mystic Pines 2 development in Texas Township. Next is the approval of the following appointments to the Board of Review for Assessments and approval of a waiver of City Commission Rule 12E regarding term limits. And all of these reappointments are for a term expiring on January 31st, 2025. The reappointment of Michael Anderson, the reappointment of Glenda Campbell, the reappointment of William Gladstone III, the reappointment of H. Charles Kiplinger, and the reappointment of Linda Service.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma.
And a couple more.
Oh, that's right.
We had to add. Item G9 is the request to add the following item: approval of a cost share agreement with the City of Portage in the amount of $915.12 for water main replacement on Lovers Lane from Kilgore Road to I-94, and request to add the following item on the consent: approval of a mayor's appointments and reappointments to boards and commissions to the Civil Rights Board for a term expiring on March 31, 2025. That is Jacob Beach and Janine Brown. And for a term ending March 31, 2023, Madison Lukeman. And for terms expiring on March 31, 2024, Dustin Corwin and Sandra Calderon. And the reappointment of Joshua Sledge to the Retirement Investment and Perpetual Care Investment Committee for a term expiring on March 31, 2025. And the rest are appointments to the Retirement Investment Committee and Perpetual Care Investment Committee with terms expiring on March 31, 2025, that being Nick Griffith, Dean Berge, and Sandy Doctor.
Thank you very much, Manager Ritzma. Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to approve items 1 through 3 and 5 through 10 now, and authorize the city manager to sign all documents on behalf of the city. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Cooney,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Hess. Clerk Borling, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman,
Yes.
Commissioner Juarez,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cooney,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Decker.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The items on the consent agenda are approved. We're now down to our regular agenda. City Manager Ritzma.
Item H1 is adoption of an ordinance to amend certain sections of Chapter 38 of the Kalamazoo Code to change the rates charged for drinking water. And, Your Honor, we have the next two items are for the utility rates. So I would ask that our Director of Public Services, James Baker, come forward, and he's got a presentation. And this will cover items H1 and H2 together.
Welcome, Director Baker. Good to have you with us here this evening.
City Manager, thank you for giving Public Services this opportunity to review these rates again with you tonight for consideration. So last time when we had this rate discussion, we had a committee of the whole session on January 18th. During that time period, we went into some detail about project needs, investment needs, things of that nature. We also went into some details on cost structures. So tonight, I'm going to be reviewing some of what those economic impacts are, some of those cost structures. And we're also going to touch a little bit about some of those changes that we're proposing to our industrial customers within the wastewater treatment plant. We held a meeting back on January 25th that really just focused on our industrial customers. And with me tonight, I did want to introduce Mr. Peter Hafner. Mr. Peter Hafner serves on our Utility Policy Committee. The Utility Policy Committee is a committee that's comprised of 4 township-appointed members and 3 City of Kalamazoo-appointed members. The UPC, as they're known, hears the drinking water rates before they come to City Commission. And in accordance with our agreement with the townships, the UPC has the ability to support those rates or recommend their own rate if they have a difference of opinion. So I was going to get through some of this, and then I'll have Peter come up and have some discussion about kind of the cooperation between the city and the townships as we embark upon our work together, if you will. So getting right into our proposed utility rates. Next slide, please. We really wanted to highlight the importance of the water utility rates, the importance that the rates that we pay as customers are the customer base pays for this utility. This utility is a citizen-owned utility. This utility is owned by City of Kalamazoo citizens as well as the township citizens that we serve. There's no other outside funding that comes in. The utilities are not reliant on tax generated by property taxes. It's all generated through rates. So it's generated through user fees. And all those rates that are generated through user fees, that provides the capital for us to invest. That also provides all of our operations and maintenance so that we can keep the water flowing and keep all the programs in place that we're doing. Next slide, please. I want to talk a little bit about some concepts that have been in play for the last several years about equalized water rates. So we have now and going forward, city customers and township customers will pay the same per unit rate for drinking water. There's a lot of benefit to that. There's a lot of history behind that, and we just wanted to highlight kind of that concept here tonight. Next slide, please. So when you look at the rate increases, if you will, we've got kind of an overall system revenue requirement for drinking water of about 14%, an overall revenue requirement of wastewater of about 12%, and those overall recommendations are in line with what we made last year. Going forward and looking out over the next 3 years, we're going to have similar rate recommendations. So given the capital plans that we have in place today, understanding what we know about our operations and maintenance plans, we're projecting at this time to have similar rate increases next year. So when we come forward in 2023, we will be recommending something in the neighborhood of 14% for drinking water and somewhere in the neighborhood of about 10% for wastewater. Then as we move out into 2024 and 2025, those recommendations are starting to decline somewhat. We'd be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 7.5% for 2024 in drinking water and about 7.5% in 2024 in wastewater. Next slide, please. So as we talk about those rate impacts, those rate increases for our customers, we want to take a look and provide some perspective to what that looks like in comparison to other Michigan utilities. These are Michigan utilities that are comparable in size, comparable in city size, and comparable in utility size to Kalamazoo. So there's, I don't know if you can see on the bar chart, there's some kind of pink and then darker pink, green, and then darker green. And that kind of shows where Kalamazoo is currently at the extreme low end of the scale. And then if these rates, proposed rates were to go into effect, Kalamazoo would shift slightly towards the center, but still would be on that lower end of the scale. So that gives you some perspective on where Kalamazoo kind of lies within all these other Michigan utilities. To put this in perspective for dollars and cents for a typical customer, you're looking at about $8.67 per month for a city customer. That includes water and wastewater together. And then for a township customers, that increase would be about $4 for wastewater and water together. Next slide, please. So this is kind of bringing everything home, bringing it all together. We talked about, what those percent increases are, how they're the difference between in-city, out-city, what the actual increase amount would be. And then this is what we would look at for about a total quarterly water bill would be about $82, whether you're in-city or out. Wastewater, there's out-city or township customers would pay more for wastewater. So all told, your total quarterly water bill would be about $134 for in-city customers and about $153.64 for out-city. Next slide, please. So we understand that this is hard. We take this very serious. We understand that folks are maybe struggling. We understand that folks are, experiencing financial stresses and strains of their own. So we have multiple programs in place to help our customers. And I'm just going to kind of go down the list here and talk about which one of those programs are. First is Helping Neighbors. Helping Neighbors program is really aimed at working with our customer base that is interested in lowering their consumption. So this may be a family who is thinks they may be using more water than they should. They may see their usage higher than they think it should be on their bill. So we're going to work with that family to employ water efficiency and water saving products within the home, things like low flow shower fixtures, things like faucet aerators, things like toilet test kits to identify leaks within the toilet. We have toilet replacing valves that makes the toilet flow less when you flush it. This is a partnership with Consumers Energy, so there's also a natural gas component of this as well. So if you feel that perhaps you're using more natural gas than you should, they're going to look at improving efficiency of your water heater, your furnace, things of that nature. For income qualified customers, there's a home inspection and where appliance replacement is recommended, so you could get a more efficient unit, for example, like a heater, to move to a higher efficiency heater. Consumers Energy is going to work with that customer to find funding resources so that that customer doesn't have that burden, and so that we can make that appliance replacement for that customer. One of the next big target areas that we're looking at is our Kalamazoo Water Affordability Plan. That's a program that we just received a grant from EGLE on just in the fall. I believe it was in October, September or October that we received that. So we just started doing that work. Really the focus of that work is to bring in experts within utility finance, legal experts to be able to look at what options do we have in terms of helping with cost. And we're out doing that work right now. It's our goal to have something brought back in 2023 for recommendation, and this could be something along the lines of an affordability program that's targeted at ALICE income levels, and we'd also really like to see this program help to address interior plumbing or indoor plumbing that's on the responsibility of the property owner. We do see some gaps right now. We're out doing a lot of lead service line replacements. We set a record this year for the most ever, 940 replacements done this last year. We're doing all that great work on target to have all lead service lines replaced in Kalamazoo by 2037. That doesn't address lead service lines within homes. We understand that homes may have interior lead plumbing, and we'd like to have a program that's set up to be able to help with that. So that's really some of the focus of the Water Affordability Plan. In March of 2020, we announced that we would be ceasing all water shutoffs for delinquent accounts. That's something that we've held through 2020. We've upheld that through 2021, and we're here to uphold that again. So there will not be any delinquent water shutoffs in Kalamazoo due to non-payment. There are other reasons why we have to shut water off. If we're doing work in the home, if we don't have a contact on who's in the home. So there may be times where we'll shut water off. That is not for delinquent status. So we will not shut off water for delinquent status. The City of Kalamazoo does have payment plans in place. So any one of our residential customers who may have challenges meeting the current billing cycle can come forward, and we can set up a payment plan that's going to be right for that customer. Another advantage of smart meters, in the consent agenda tonight, $700,000 of smart meters was approved. Some of those smart meters, as we go out, we're currently doing a smart meter program through attrition, and we also have some targeted project areas that we identified some years ago. But with those smart meter installations, we can help customers identify their usage in real time, and we can help connect customers to what that usage is now versus 3 months from now when they get that quarterly bill. And that helps customers to set and meter their usage in ways that it is going to help their family. One additional thing is the CARES Act, the COVID relief funds. That's actually CERES. It's COVID Emergency Relief or COVID Emergency Relief Act. So I've got the letters messed around there. But anyway, HRI, Housing Resources Incorporated in Kalamazoo, is administering that program. And that's a program that covers utility bills. It covers drinking water bill, your city water bill is a covered expense. So you can call HRI or go on HRI's website and sign up for utility assistance. That's what this program's all about, is utility assistance, and that can help pay your water bill. In fact, if you go to HRI's website right now, that's the first thing that pulls up is this program for utility assistance. Next slide, please. So I did want to talk a little bit about some of the changes for industrial customers. So I'm shifting gears on you here. I'm now talking about wastewater. Our wastewater treatment plant, we have a wide array of industrial customers. We also serve City of Portage. We have other contract municipal customers. So one of the things that when we're looking at industrial customers, large manufacturers, is cost recovery in terms of what is their share of the treatment plant. The treatment plant really is a fixed cost model. It takes about $24 million a year to operate and maintain our wastewater treatment plant, and there's a large portion of that, about 40% of our revenue requirements for the wastewater treatment plant come from industrial customers. And so those industrial customers are a key component of that. And what the shares plan looks at doing is creates kind of a fixed price model for that and gives industries the ability to kind of pay a fixed price over this next year based on the previous 2 years of usage. Now, you've heard from some industries that may work for them. You've heard from some industries that may not prefer that model. Some industries are actually set up to where they would prefer a kind of pay-as-you-go. So they would just pay their wastewater bill based on their usage for that month. So we've incorporated that into the ordinance. The ordinance that you have in front of you has seen those modifications. We consider those non-substantive changes that would not require to go back to a second reading. So we've reached back out to our industrial customers and asked them to either opt into the program or opt out of the program. If industrial customers opt into the program, we'll be billing them over the next year based on the average of their performance over the past 24 months. If they opt out, we're just going to bill them at where they perform. So there's some advantages to industries if they have been making changes to optimize wastewater treatment discharge, if they've been making efficiency upgrades on their side at their own plants, and that's recent. We want to make sure that we acknowledge that. There's one of the great advantages for the city and the industries as well, if they do elect to participate in shares, is that we can see it's a fixed price. So we know exactly what this industry is going to pay over the next 12 months. And that industry knows exactly what they're going to pay over the next 12 months. And so that makes things a little bit easier when we're looking at how we're going to fund the $24 million to operate and maintain the treatment plant. That's part of that. Another component that we did want to talk about that's in the ordinance is a change in how we're measuring waste strength at the treatment plant. We historically have used BOD. We're going to be transitioning to COD. I'm going to attempt not to go into all the details of what all this stuff means. Essentially, we're going to be tracking all oxygen-demanding constituents that come to the treatment plant, as opposed to BOD kind of measures the oxygen demand of, a really true organic waste, and the COD really measures any use of oxygen in the treatment plant. We did a major upgrade several years ago, in about 2012, I believe it was. We upgraded all of our blowers to high-efficiency blowers, and we're using dissolved air, a fine bubble diffuse process. So it's a major energy improvement that we did at the wastewater treatment plant. So our cost to treat per pound of waste went down dramatically. However, when we look at our electric usage, we looked at the BOD coming into the plant, and we looked at the COD coming into the plant, our electric usage ties nearly identical to COD, and our BOD keeps falling off. So to put in another way, perhaps speaking more bluntly, our COD that we were capturing and measuring and charging back was falling off, but yet our electric bill kept going higher. So we're really looking to capture all of that cost now. Next slide, please. So I will open up for discussion. I do want to not leave Mr. Hafner alone here for a second. I'll call him up to talk about drinking water, and then I think at that point we can get into some discussion and talk more detail about any questions anybody.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. And my name is Peter Hefner. I am a CPA and a partner in a public accounting firm, and I serve on the Utility Policy Committee. And I just wanted to point out that part of the contract that was approved last year, the Utility Policy Committee, is to come to the Commission and provide a recommendation. And this year, our recommendation is to follow the guidance of the rate consultant, which is being presented to you by your staff. I also wanted to point out that the Utility Policy Committee has been meeting monthly. We diligently went through your capital improvement plan, and that's primarily the driver of these rate increases. And then we had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Foster of the Foster Group, the rate consultants. And then we had an opportunity to go into detail with the rate model and have the source data. And upon reviewing the capital plan and the urgent need for providing a safe, efficient, effective system, the Utility Policy Committee asked me to come here and just to communicate to you that we are in agreement with the rate increase, and should we not have been, that we would bring that to you as well. We want to thank your staff. They are participating with this group on a monthly basis. We're learning a lot of things about the process, the improvements that are necessary, but the end result is the policy committee is in agreement with the proposed rate increase for the water, and they have no involvement on the wastewater side.
Thank you, Mr. Hafner. Commissioners, questions? I know we've spent a lot of time talking about this, so we don't need to go all over the same ground, I'm sure, entirely, but this is the night we're voting on it. At a hearing, we had a committee of the whole meeting to discuss this in greater depth. So now we have Director Baker in front of us here. Questions? Commissioner Pradel. You look like you had a question.
You know I'm ready with my questions. Thanks, Director Baker, for your presentation and ongoing presentations. I had a question for you. Obviously we see that there's definitely dollars trickling down from federal and state sources for different infrastructure improvements in communities. We have ARPA funds that are available. They're still undesignated and whatnot. Hypothetically speaking, say if some of those dollars trickle down in significant ways, do you foresee any possibility or scenario where those rate increases might be less in future years if those sources could be utilized fully? Or do you envision it being more of a scenario where it's like, we've got this plan and rate structure set up where we see the increases, but we're going to put the foot on the gas and do even more, because we have these extra dollars we didn't anticipate? Like, how do you foresee that and articulate that thought process, should more dollars come through?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Pradel. That's a great question. One of the things that, sometimes we don't do is highlight all the, positive grant dollars that we got in. The capital improvement plan for drinking water is pretty robust. And with that, the bonding plan, I believe, is about $37 million of projects that we plan to pay for. So that's a lot of work there. We were very successful with state of Michigan with Eagle. We received $5 million grant from the Booker funds for lead service line replacements in Northside, and that there's also a federal earmark on that project as well, although we don't know where that stands at this time. Looking back at some of over the last 2-year period, we've had several projects where we're bringing in multi-million dollars worth of grants, to help offset revenue requirements within drinking water. That being said, we're going back for another swing, if you will, to try to bring some more grant dollars back, for Kalamazoo. A lot of the state or federal dollars for drinking water are going to be housed within the Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund. That's something that Kalamazoo has been very successful in, beginning in 2018, 2019, and that's something that we plan to participate in annually. So if you look at it, all those additional dollars coming in, $5 to $10 million doesn't move a lot when you're talking about $40 million a year of capital. But if those numbers were to increase significantly, that can start to pull down some of those rate increases. And certainly there's a lot of anticipation at the federal level and at the state level as we look at bringing more dollars home to Kalamazoo. So I think it's too hard to call at this point what that future may look like in 2023 and 2024 as we continue to try to bring dollars in. I just wanted to highlight that we are bringing dollars in. That is happening right now, and we plan to increase that, and we plan to continue to do that.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, that you have some sort of a crystal ball, but I was just more or less interested in, like, conceivably, is it possible that could happen? And it sounds like potentially,
Certainly.
Okay.
I think that is very possible.
Okay, great, thank you. The other thing, I just want to, we keep talking about this gliding path between the townships and the city, and if I'm a city resident, I'm sitting there looking at it, wait a second, I'm just looking at this and you're telling me, okay, mine's going to go up on average about $8.67 per month, and the township folks, why do they get to only have to have an increase of $4.13 estimated per month? So can you just quickly explain that for people who might be viewing this or watching this and wondering, like, hey, why am I paying a little bit more as a city person? How does that fit into the gliding path rate structure?
Yeah, great question, Nick. Certainly. So this year with this 2022 with the proposed rates, that's the last year of the glide path. So from 2022 forward, city residents and out-city, township residents will pay the same going forward. So for a typical customer, that's about $82 for 2022 moving forward. If you go back to the January 18th commission meeting, we had several more slides, and we went into some significant detail on kind of those glide paths, that trajectory. So there is a slide within that deck that shows kind of where we've come over the last 5 years or so of an out-city rate, township rate, and then the in-city rate for drinking water. And it kind of shows the two kind of coming together, and then they meet. They don't cross, they do meet. And then from here going forward, they would carry those same rate increases together. So, when you heard me talk about like a $4 or $8, the Kalamazoo share was bigger, so it was a bigger step, if you will, but they're at the same spot. So if you're, say, going up a flight of stairs, we're now at the same landing. The in-city residents were going up the stairs at a faster pace to catch up.
Thank you for explaining that. You mentioned a number of options that we're working on to try to work with individuals and households that might struggle to pay with their bills. And I mean, I know this group of people who are up here, and I mean, we all think very closely. I mean, anytime that there's going to be a rate increase, we know that somebody's going to have additional hardship potentially to pay things. And I appreciate you outlining some options of ways that we could potentially help people and being thoughtful about that. I know you care deeply about that and take that to heart as well, which I appreciate. My question is, and maybe this isn't something I think necessarily you're going to solve, but I bring this up as maybe just more of a thing that we as a community think about, because I see this in my daytime job. I've seen more recently people come in with, consumers' utility bills that were like $900 that they owed. And I mean, it wasn't because that their house cost for that month was $900, it's because they owed multiple months back. So, there's generally like this mentality, like if you couldn't afford it this month, the likelihood that somebody is going to afford it 3 months from now when it's now $900 is kind of, it's not realistic, right, for a lot of homeowners. And a number of the structures and safety nets in place to help people out are on a basis of arrears. So you have to demonstrate that you're, however many months behind in your utility bill, and it's consumers, whatever it is. But I, really challenge us as a community to kind of think through a process where we, set up a structure so that we're not just requiring the demonstration of arrears, because, then all of a sudden you look at that person's utility and they're owing all the back rate overcharges and, those sort of things on their bills oftentimes, which makes it even harder for them to afford. Whereas if they had just gotten the help when we knew that they needed it in the first place, we'd be able to make sure they're taken care of. I know it's not entirely, something that you're just a piece of that equation, but as a community, I definitely want to challenge us to think about that and how we manage support for people who are struggling to pay. I also just wanted to note, I really appreciate, I noticed on our water bills that there's that notation, if you do need assistance or help about how to get that help. The other thing I just wanted to notate, and again, I don't necessarily expect an answer here or anything, but I think I've heard from a number of people, and I even encountered this at work, that the water bill seems to sometimes come rather from the due date. It comes pretty close to when the due date is. And so, I just, at some point, I think it'd be interesting to look at that just to see that we don't cut it so close for people, because if they're already, struggling to pay, if it cuts it too close to the due date, then they can't, they're going to end up paying an overage on it just because of the nature of when they received it and how quickly they might get paid or something. So I've seen that both on the commercial side, but also the residential side of billing. But I do really appreciate the fact that we notate, like, if you need help or assistance, that's where to find it. I was going to mention and just notate as well, like, I thought it was super cool to see for the industrial customers that, we were very responsive. We heard the feedback and said, we really would appreciate an opt-out option based on how we operate and what would be best for us as a business. And to hear Bell's Brewery, which is such an important, like, anchor institution for the city of Kalamazoo, give us a thumbs up to say, hey, great job being responsive government and hearing us and trying to work on a creative strategy. I want to give you hats off to really hearing that and being responsive. I was wondering if you can, I struggled a little bit on the BOD to COD conversion. And first off, I was just wondering if you could just give, like, what that acronym is for each of those, and then just kind of walk us through that a little bit. I hate to hear that, but sometimes with those acronyms, it's, hard to follow and everything. And I know that, you mentioned, like, in 2012, there was the high efficiency improvements, and that had an impact on that BOD to COD conversion. But if you could just share a little bit more about that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, certainly. And then I'll, also provide some additional resources. So in your Friday emails, there was a little bit of a narrative about, some of the proposed changes within industrial billing. There was a description to an industry day, kind of a class that we gave with all of the industries, and there should be a link. That link will take you to about an hour-long presentation by public services staff, where we kind of go into detail and explain kind of all the mechanisms of how that works. So if I still don't quite hit the point, I would encourage that. Ron Jansen is one of the staff members who gave that presentation, and Ron has been a city employee here in Wastewater since 1984, and he's really an expert at what he does. He's quite a wonderful teacher of that stuff. So that being said, so BOD really kind of stands for biochemical oxygen demand, and it's a strength of how we measure the organic strength of wastewater. How strong is that wastewater? What is the oxygen requirement to break that down? We utilize a 5-day BOD in wastewater. You can do 2-day BODs or 30-day BODs or ultimate BODs, and it just gives you a little bit a different measurement. And really, that's measuring that organic strength. Now, COD is chemical oxygen demand, which includes the biochemical component of that, but it also includes all chemical demands. And so at the Kalamazoo treatment plant, we feed carbon into the process. We feed activated carbon into the process to help with some carbon absorption, as well as to prevent some toxicity of our bioorganisms. And then we have to have an oxygen supply, which is our big blowers. And so when we are treating industrial streams that we commonly do here, we're not just treating food waste or kind of residential household stuff to where the oxygen demanding need of the wastewater is from organic sources. When we look at everything across all these industries, we really get into some waste streams where their oxygen demanding source is really chemical in nature. Things such as, we're receiving loads of methyl chloride and, some of these other things that are coming to the treatment plant. We've got to break that down. We've got to treat that, and it might not be as easy to treat as, say, like the domestic waste that would come from a residential property, which is extremely easy to break down because it's more natural. So what we need to do
from a cost recovery standpoint is make sure that we're accurately measuring all of that, and that industries that discharge waste streams that are high in COD are paying their fair share of those costs.
So kind of to summarize, there's a lot, it changes like what goes into it, energy-wise, chemical input-wise, and to treat that wastewater.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha, excellent. And then I usually will ask you this question, so, I'm a household, I'm working 2 jobs, scrunching my, just trying to figure out how to get by from week to week. We have not made significant capital improvement increases until recent years into our capital improvements plan. If you were, looking at that family and saying, like, why is this moment? Why should we do it right now? What would you say to them?
Certainly, first and foremost, I think we have to be compassionate to that, and we understand that within public services. These are our families too. We're part of this community. Whether it's a consumer's energy bill or a water bill or something, it's all money out of your pocket, right? Well, there has been some significant changes in what we call level of service demands on the water utility and on the wastewater utility as well. There's been some changes in Michigan lately, over the last 10 years. Kalamazoo has always had a lead service line replacement program. I think that's something that, Kalamazoo's always excelled on. But one of the things that we needed to do for our community was to put a date certain on that. And we did that back in 2017. We put a date certain that we were going to take all the lead service lines and have those completely replaced by 2037, 20 years from 2017. With that comes, there's a price tag with that. So in today's dollars right now, if we had to draw a line in the sand and say, all right, how many lead service lines are we in? We're in the neighborhood of $70 to $80 million of outstanding need, and we've been working on this at a rate of 500 per year since 2017. We just hit 940 last year, and prior to that, going all the way back to the 90s, they did a tremendous amount of replacements as well when they were coordinated those with local street projects. So there's been a lot of work here in Kalamazoo, and there's going to be a lot more work here in Kalamazoo. And I think that, when we're starting to set targets, we're starting to set goals, we're starting to be date certain about goals, that we have to be date certain about the funding as well. And that's some of the things we're doing. Another thing that, we're really focusing on is what we call the asset management plan approach, to where we're going to dig up an entire street for blocks, Cork Street, Oakland Drive, Parkview, Portage Street, Miller. When we're doing these major street projects and we're inconveniencing an entire city's ability to get around, to drive around, even to walk, to bike, all that kind of stuff, and we're completely changing the landscape on the street, and we want to make sure that we're intentional when we do that, and we leave that so that we don't have to come back to it. So we look at water main break history, age, and material as well. When we looked at Cork Street, we were averaging 3 water main breaks per year on Cork Street. So we really needed to replace that. So that's part of our capital project, is coordinating water main replacements with street projects. In fact, tonight, Lover's Lane, that's a coordination with City of Portage. So that's City Kalamazoo water system south of Kilgore. Everyone knows what Kilgore is. That's the line with us in Portage. But because 94 kind of comes in on an angle, we serve City of Portage water customers that lie north of 94. And so that's our water system. And they're doing a street project. It's their street. We're coordinating together so we do the water, so that we can deliver a better project to the public, so that we can have infrastructure that lasts into the future. And so we're being intentional about that. There's a price tag that comes with that as well. Another thing that's related to that is back to reliability. We've had at least one catastrophic main break probably per year. A couple of years ago we had Pitcher at Walnut. This was a main break that happened in the height of the polar vortex at a major intersection under a railroad. That one main break cost over $300,000. We had to do a directional drill and bore under the railroad. It was a live railroad track with freight trains. We had to set up and do that. Commissioners may remember Crosstown. Wonderful spring day, Crosstown, we just decided to blow the street up. And that was because there was a major transmission main through there, and it dated back to, I think, 1914 or something of that nature. That project was over $1 million. That was not, we didn't go into the year and say, hey, let's blow up Crosstown. That was not on our plan. But as we look at our water main age, and we look at the miles of pipe that we have that's older than 100 years, or we're going into the future. We've got main that's on Burdick from 1910, from 1914. That's risk. And so, as a department with 230 staff, we can only handle so much of this risk in any given year. And what we're really trying to do is act now. Be intentional with the work that we're doing now so that we can have a reliable system that we can rely on, so that we can put out fires, so we can have safe drinking water, so we can have all that great stuff of this water system, and that we don't have these catastrophic main breaks. We're still going to have main breaks. That's not going to go away. What we're trying to do is limit that so that we can continue to have a resilient, reliable system, and that we continue to have safe, clean drinking water and fire response and everything else. So I think, to kind of get to the point and answer the question, really it's about the investment that's needed now. There has been investment in the past. We're, at a time for change. A lot of level service things have changed for us, and that, we need to be intentional and do the work. And we're focused on that. We're committed to do that work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Long, helpful answers. Commissioner Hess.
I think this will be shorter. But Director Baker, I marvel at the amount of information you can pull out of your brain at any time without notes. I'm amazed. So thank you for that. You also, and thank you for bringing forth the ways for people that either are on budgets or are struggling to be able to pay their bills. Another thing that they can do, they can reach housing resources, but there are other avenues as well, and folks can simply call 211 and ask for help with paying their water bill. So 211 will also get them some resources. And I just have to say that I think a lot of us, myself before I began to serve on commission, tended to take our water system for granted. We cannot. And tonight's vote will show us that we really want to invest in a safe, healthy, strong water system for our community. So thank you for doing what you do and for sharing this wonderful information. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Director Baker? Yeah, Commissioner Juarez.
I have a comment. We really appreciate the work that's being done in the core neighborhoods, especially where there's concentrated poverty and higher residents with people of color. We see that the drinking water is super important, right? Especially for everybody. And so seeing the efforts being done around lead piping and stuff like that in those areas is super important. Like the amount of care that you have for all of Kalamazoo, not just certain parts of Kalamazoo, is very appreciative. So I just want to thank you for that, for thinking about all of Kalamazoo, not just certain parts of Kalamazoo, but all of it. So I appreciate that, Director Baker.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Juarez. Any more questions for Director Baker? All right. I guess at this point, if there are no more questions, is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this item? It's item H1. I know we had a long conversation, but this is related to amending the sections of Chapter 31 related to changing the rates charged for drinking water. Yes?
Hello. The person that was just here mentioned that the water system is held privately by individuals. Now, for a public water system, maybe we should nationalize that or certify it or whatever you want to call it. And try not to make these individuals rich off our people. I wonder who does own that water system. Is it the city of Kalamazoo or is it some private individuals who are getting rich off it? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wants to make comment on this item? Seeing no one else here in the chambers, Deputy Manager Chamberlain, do we have anyone watching remotely who wants to comment? I guess I will list the phone number again here. It is 888-382-9556.
Mr. Mayor, I believe we're only taking on the online public comments at the beginning of the meeting, and Attorney, please
Okay.
correct me if I'm wrong.
So, nothing specific to this item then?
Tell you what, give me a second, I'll pull it up, please. No, sir, nothing.
Thank you, DCM Chamberlain. Seeing that there are no more comments, the recommended action is a motion to adopt the ordinance. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion made by Commissioner Juarez,
Second.
supported by Commissioner Decker. Commissioners, discussion. Attorney Robinson.
I just want to point out a couple of things for you. These two ordinances were introduced at the last meeting, and there are some changes in the language. The first is, and this is for both ordinances, that due to a Scrivener's error, it had the wrong date of effect. So these two ordinances will become effective on March 4th, and with the billings that begin on that date. So before, I think it was March 1st, so that was it's a non-significant error. It was a Scrivener's error. There's no need for amendment on this one and the next one. However, when we get to the wastewater discussion, because there was a change with the opt-out procedure, you'll have to formally amend the ordinance when we get there to accept that opt-out language. But as Director Baker indicated, I've opined that that is not a substantive change, and so you can make that amendment tonight and it'll go into effect. You don't have to wait another 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson. Any other discussion on the item? Commissioner Pradel.
Yeah, I was just, I really appreciate Director Baker answering the questions, and I thoroughly appreciate, just the thoughtful responses as others have said. Something that really resonated, we had a retreat this weekend, and one of the things that really resonated with my colleague over here to my left, Commissioner Juarez, he said, one of the things he thinks about is what happens on our watch, right? And that resonated with me for a number of reasons, because I do think about that a lot. But one of the things that I probably think about more than any other issue is the health and safety of the people who reside in this city and the people we serve. Health and safety, right? It's the foundation of everything else that's possible. And, we have seen, decades of underinvestment, not just in the city of Kalamazoo, but in a lot of urban core communities in the state and around the country. And I never want to see, even if it's decades down the road, and I'm no longer here on the city commission, and I'm sitting hopefully bouncing up and down with my grandkids on my lap, that something bad related to health or safety happened in our community that was catastrophic because we didn't invest it when it mattered most, because we underinvested, because we didn't think about the future. And we absolutely are making a very difficult decision here because it's going to impact people's pocketbooks. But I have with every fiber in my being the belief that this is the time to push our foot on the gas, to make sure that we can be proud of this infrastructure for many years to come, and that we never have an instance in this community similar to other communities have experienced right here in the state of Michigan. So with that, I absolutely am supportive and plan to vote yes on these proposed rate changes.
Thank you, Commissioner Pradel. A couple other comments I'll add here just relative to, we've got several items that's going to seem a bit repetitive as we go through the rest of these here under the regular agenda, but I guess I'll just get this part out now. Just for clarification here, this is a public utility. This is not a private utility. As a consequence, This is not driven by profit margin. This is in essence, this is a citizen, a resident-owned utility that we are providing services to ourselves. What drives our cost is just purely operations and borrowing money when we need to improve things. That's what's driving our costs. So as a matter of fact, I think Mr. Hefner recognized that I could be a little off on my math here, but as much as 70% of this rate increase is going to pay back money that we are borrowing to invest in our system to improve it. And if we look further down our agenda here, for both systems together, we're going to be borrowing, we're issuing bonds over $62 million. That's something we're going to get to yet this evening. I also suggest that, yes, no one ever runs for office saying, I want to increase the cost of anything. That's never a campaign plank, that's for sure. But one of the most foundational things that we tend to forget about is just providing safe drinking water. And for years and years and years, we just went along, not even thinking about it. It was so just habitual until we had a horrible, horrible experience here in Michigan over in the city of Flint. I think that is more so reminds us how important it is to invest in this system that we all share, this foundational system that is really, in many ways, a basis for civilization, clean water, and treated wastewater. That's what it is. I will say great communities have healthy, functioning water and wastewater systems. That's why we're doing this work. That's what we must have. Clerk Borland, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Hoffman,
Yes.
Commissioner Juarez,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cooney,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Decker,
Yes.
and Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Thank you, Clerk Borling, and thank you, Commissioners. Item H1 is adopted. Next item on the agenda, City Manager Ritzma.
Item H2 is adoption of an ordinance to amend certain sections of Chapter 28 of the Kalamazoo Code to change the rates charged for wastewater.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. I would normally ask, is there a staff report on this item? But I would suggest that we have received the staff report because it covered both things. But are there specific questions for staff just relative to this motion before we get to any modifications? Any other questions from Commission? All right, Attorney Robinson.
First thing you need to do is move for the approval of the motion.
Okay, so we'd have to take a motion first. So I'm a little confused about this, to be quite frank here. Normally on regular agenda items, we ask for public comment as well. Are we prepared for that? Is there anyone, I don't know, who's called in? And I'll also ask, I'm sorry, do you want to wait for that, Attorney
No,
Robinson?
under your rules, the only people who can comment on the agenda items are people in the chamber. Because it's so difficult to get people online, they're permitted to comment during public comment time on anything. And then on individual items, people who are present in the chamber may comment on those.
Okay, helpful. Opportunity for people in the chamber to comment on this item?
Hello again. I guess a interesting question on that very note. If people apply for an ADA accommodation, like Jen Strebs, for example, who has a compromised immune system as a county commissioner, would they be allowed to comment? I don't know. And I have asked about that to the city, and I've yet to hear a response about just general other board meetings. I did want to ask a question. I see that you guys are adopting the Code of Ordinances to make these things, and I see that any citizen can apply to change ordinances with 411 petition signatures. Could they amend to change the price that people pay for water with 411 petition signatures? I'm not sure who I would ask about that or the procedure. I think those petition signatures would have to be in by March 11th. And then if they did, could the commissioners just go and change it the next week? I'm not really sure how that works. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments on item H2? Seeing none. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, Bill Reeves again, city resident, 51 years. Back to things that are hard. Yes, it's hard to get comments in maybe on a quick basis like that, but Director Baker just came in with a crap ton of information in a fairly short amount of time. I don't think it's fair that the other, I don't know, a few thousand people in the city, I couldn't tell you the exact number, 70,000, some odd 80,000 people can't comment, not a single one of them, unless they're here in the chamber about the wastewater stuff or the drinking water, et cetera. Like I said, that was a lot of information to digest. And now that they've heard it, they can't say a peep until after the vote's already been taken. So that seems a little non-transparent, to use the word that you guys like to use a lot, transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wants to comment on item H2?
Jeff Messer, city resident. So the committee of the whole meeting, like 2 meetings ago, the whole committee of the whole meeting was about the wastewater and wastewater rates, and that's when all this information was given for the first time. The public, that was like probably the public's main opportunity to get all this information well in advance of tonight's meeting. So the commission has done a good job. They had the committee of the whole meeting. The whole thing was about the wastewater, and then last 2 weeks ago was the first reading of this ordinance. The public could have commented on it at that time. If the public wanted to comment on tonight's issue, that's what the public comment at the beginning of the meeting is for. So I don't like to contradict other speakers, but I do think the public has had ample opportunity, even if they don't come to the meetings, to participate in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wants to comment on item H2? Then seeing no one at this time, then Attorney Robinson, do we need a motion?
There's 2 ways you can approach it. The first way is to introduce or move for the approval of the ordinance as was introduced, and then amend it to add the opt-out language, and this is kind of a 2-step process. The other thing you could do is move to adopt the ordinance as presented tonight containing the opt-out language, but pointing it out that it does contain that change. So one's more formal, one's a little more informal. And I don't want to get you caught up in parliamentary procedure, but that's your options.
All right, so there's a couple options there. I'm just going to suggest, we've talked about the language, had very direct discussion about what was modified to give people a choice to opt in or opt out. So,
and I would point out, Your Honor, that it's only for the industrial customers.
Yes.
It's not for residential. So it's only for a very narrow class of customer, and it's the industrial users.
So Attorney Robinson, can you suggest some wording for me here for the motion that would be in front of us, which starts out adoption of an ordinance to amend certain sections of Chapter 28 of the Kalamazoo Code to change the rates charged for wastewater.
And as amended to permit the opt-out language for industrial users.
And as amended to permit the opt-out language for industrial users. Yes. There are commissioners willing to make that motion?
So moved.
Made by Vice Mayor Cooney.
Second.
Supported, all right. Thank you. Supported by Commissioner Hoffman. Any other discussion on this item? Clerk Barling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Juarez,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cooney,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Decker,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Item H2 is adopted. Our next item on the agenda, H3, Manager Ritzma.
Adoption of an ordinance approving the issuance and sale of water supply system revenue bonds, Series 2022, for an amount not to exceed $34 million, in adoption of a notice of sale resolution.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Is there a staff report on this item?
No, there aren't, there is not, but we do have staff here to answer any questions.
All right, thank you so much. I want to remind everyone that this is something that's been under discussion. We did have a hearing on this particular item. This is for issuing and sale of water supply revenue bonds. Any questions from commissioners here? All right. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on item H3?
I know you say this is a public utility, but aren't that $30 million worth of bonds going to be bought by private individuals? If so, what kind of rates are we paying them? What interest do they bear? How deep are we going in trying to provide for this water supply? We can buy bottles of water from Walmart at a pinch so far. If the price was way up, that would be a problem too. But it looks to me as though the price has gone way up on the public for this water supply. I'm not sure we need that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
So I asked last time the same question. I'm not going to ask it again, but I'm just getting the vibe that I'm not going to hear from anybody, even after the meeting. So do I have to file a Freedom of Information Act to get a response about that? And if I do, I can't ask it in the form of a question because FOIAs don't have to answer questions. So then if I say it's like I'm playing Jeopardy. What is the mayor's name? You don't have to answer, but give me the mayor's name, you do. It's silly. I don't understand. I guess I did want to comment about what the attorney pointed out. It's only for industrial users. Just the vibe that gives off is that a rich company like Bell's comes in here, politely comes in and says, hey, we got a lot of money, we don't like what you're doing, give us an exception and we'll work with you. If you don't, then, we're gonna make it happen the way we want. Versus little old me, I can't do that. I gotta get 1,000 people to show up, and you all know how that's impossible to do. Maybe 100. If it's a really big, if they're sleeping in the park across the street, maybe we could get 150 people. If we organize with people as invested as Don Cooney and Nathan Dennis saying, people that are really involved in the community, holy cow, are they involved? Just the vibe that gives off. They came in last time very politely, made a public comment. Backdoor, backroom deals happen. It was worked out publicly. You guys say, okay, we're going to make an exception for you guys. But we just want to make sure that you guys all know that that's not for the little guys. You don't just, I don't know. You guys know that. Yeah, I guess just, if everybody voted for free water, they don't have to pay for a water bill. Can you guys just next week vote on yeah, we're going to double it. We'll show you. Can you do that? I don't really understand how that works. If the people come out and they speak and they say, Kalamazoo is divided. We have a lot of very rich people very, very rich, some of the richest in the state, some of the richest in the country, some of the richest in the world. But generally speaking, more than those few couple people, we have a lot of wealthy people, and we have a lot of poor people. And it's great that they don't get their water turned off for not paying their bill, but they can't be on a city board if they don't pay their water bill. They can't be involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wants to comment on item H1 about the issuance and sale of water supply revenue bonds?
Mr. Mayor?
H3.
Yeah, he's 3.
I'm sorry, did I say the wrong number?
Yeah, it's all right.
And I also wanted to, if I could, Your Honor,
Go ahead, Attorney Robinson.
I don't want members of the public watching this to leave with the impression that Bell's somehow opted out of paying water or wastewater fees. That's not the case. As was explained by Director Baker, there was 2 plans being proposed for the industries. They could use their load, if you will, for the last 24 months, and we would use that as a per month charge for the next 12 months. So what they've paid over the last 24 months, we would average that out, added up, divided by 24, and that's what they will be charged for the next 12 months. So as to smooth out their historic use of the wastewater system. What we opted to do, based upon the comments of Bell's and Continental Linen, is they said, we don't want to do that. We prefer to keep the same system that we've used historically. That is that whatever we use for that month, we'll pay for it. Or actually, they're billed in arrears because we measured it, and then we say, okay, this is what you used last month, here's what you have to pay. Those 2 companies in particular said, we don't want to go to the smoothing out system, we want to use the old system. So that's what they will be paying. So there's no industry in the community that is not paying for their water and their wastewater services. I want to make sure that impression is corrected.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson. Any questions for staff at this time on this? All right, may I please have, the public comment time is closed for this particular item.
Yes, but he lied. There is $34 million in bonds being bought up by the rich. And the private, poor people have no say in it. Thank you.
Is there a motion to support this proving the issuance and sale of these bonds?
So
Yes,
moved.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry,
Second?
who made the motion?
I did.
I'm
So
sorry,
moved.
okay, looking back and forth here.
Yeah.
Motion made by Commissioner Decker, supported by Commissioner Hess. Any discussion? Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Pradel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cooney,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Decker,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman,
Yes.
Commissioner Juarez.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Item H3 is adopted. Next on our agenda.
H4 is adoption of an ordinance authorizing the issuance of wastewater supply system revenue bonds, Series 2022, for an amount not to exceed $28 million.
I presume there is no special staff report on this.
No, there isn't, Your Honor.
Any questions for staff at this time? Is there anyone from the audience who would like to comment on item H4? Seeing no one, the recommended action is a motion to adopt the ordinance. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Cooney,
Second.
supported by Commissioner Juarez. Any discussion? I guess I will just say one thing, and this is going to be very much demonstrated in an item we have a little later on our agenda here, and that is that what happens is that when we are involved in borrowing money, we go out for a competitive rate, and we seek, at the best rate we possibly can on the money that we borrow together as a public entity to invest. And we will see how, actually, we not only watch that, but if we have an opportunity to refinance bonds that we've had paying a higher interest rate on, we watch the market and we take advantage of that. That's going to be a topic of discussion for another item here, so that we actually save money, reduce costs for all of us. So that's the work we do here. Clerk Barling, will you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Decker.
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner Juarez.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Item H4 is adopted. Next, City Manager Ritzman.
H5 is adoption of a resolution authorizing the issuance of 2022 refunding bonds, limited tax general obligation in the amount of $79,600,000.
Thank you so much. Is there any staff report on this item?
I'd just like to draw attention to the agenda report and the fact that these bonds, as the mayor indicated, are being refinanced. And we will see savings of close to $6.5 million in our other post-employment benefit fund, which funds our retiree health care liabilities. So this is a great opportunity to use interest rates in our favor and save the OPEB fund a lot of dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Ritzman. Any questions for staff on this item? Seeing none at this point, is there anyone in the audience tonight that would like to comment on this item? Seeing no one and no more comments, the recommended action is a motion to adopt the resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Made by Commissioner Pradel,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Hoffman. Any discussion, Commissioners? Commissioner Pradel.
Yeah, it was, when we were talking about this, the savings, it's like the 6.5 million or whatever it is from this, we both would just comment to each other, amazing, right? And when you see like the Imagine Kalamazoo plan and we talk about like good governance, this is good governance, right? And when we talk about having to increase rates to be thoughtful about the future and investing in the future, this is a way that we can offset that potentially for taxpayers in our community. So anyways, I just wanted to lift that up and say great work to the team in terms of these cost-saving strategies.
Yeah, I would like to also just, I think a lot of times when we see these ordinances and adoption of resolutions, it's wordy, and sometimes we don't understand it, right? Sometimes we don't understand the concept behind it and what actually goes into it. And so I think it's one of those things where just seeing us be able to save $6.5 million, I was talking to Commissioner Decker the other day about this, and we were kind of discussing around this specific thing and reading it in the report and saying, okay, wow, that's amazing, right? That's good governance, like my colleague had mentioned. And it's in those places where we don't understand and are kind of seeking to the leadership on this dais to lead us in that. And again, that's one of those trust gaps we have to close as a city. And when we can say and prove that this is good governance, that we're saving $6.5 million, that's a big, it's a win for us, I feel. At the same time, the transparency that people talk about, we still have to continue to chip away at that, right? And we know that's going to take time, and that's going to continue to happen with those conversations.
Thank you, Commissioner Juarez. Anyone else? Seeing no further discussion, Clerk Barling, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Decker.
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner Juarez.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Item H5 is adopted. Manager Ritzma, do we have one more item?
Yes, we do. We have item G4, is the first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 30 of the Kalamazoo City Code, Soil Erosion and Sediment Control to comply with state law.
Thank you very much, Manager Ritzma. Is there a staff report on this?
No, there isn't. Staff are available to answer any questions that might.
All right, Commissioners, any questions, particularly this? Commissioner Pradel?
Yeah, I just asked to have it removed to the regular agenda, just because I think, anytime we're talking about ordinance changes, it's helpful to give some people some context, even if it's a first reading. So, I would love it if we could just give the public just a little summary before we, have a final reading next meeting.
Sure. I'll call forward Rebecca Kick, our Community Planning Economic Development Director.
Welcome, Director Kick.
Thank you. So this ordinance for our soil erosion permits has not been updated in about 15 years. And this year we went through an audit with the new Environmental Great Lakes and Energy Group. And in our past ordinance, it was still being referred to as the Department of Environmental Quality, the DEQ. And so that change is being made to the ordinance. That would be it. And at the next meeting, I do plan on having our building inspector, Roger Iveson, here as well. So if any other further questions come up, he can speak in detail about the soil erosion permitting and process if you would like.
Helpful. Thank you, Director Kick.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. Is there anyone in the audience here who would like to comment on this item related to amending Chapter 30 of the Kalamazoo City Code on soil erosion and sediment control?
When she said that this hasn't been updated in 15 years, the dog at large ordinance has not been updated since 1997 when it was first written. That's been even more time than 15 years. That's 22 plus 3, 25 years. That's a quarter of a century. And I have been asking for 2 or 3 years now to address that as a citizen. And then as a board member, as a city commission candidate, as a mayoral candidate. I've had several commissioners tell me that they would look into this, tell me that they would love to grab food. I send them a text, and I get ghosted. No response back. Maybe I got the wrong number. But this is what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about people don't, like everybody here knows who I am. Imagine if you had somebody who was like really shy and really concerned. Imagine somebody who had been like beaten as a child, who has a hard time confronting people in authority. Someone with like mental health problems. Imagine a woman who was in an abusive relationship for 25 years, trying to confront somebody in a position of authority. Imagine that. It's so hard. You see people come up here all the day, all the time, that are successful, people that own businesses, and they're shaken, they're nervous, they're scared. And they're like successful in society. And then imagine somebody who's at the bottom of society. People that have never been off of food stamps. Coming up here and asking you guys, hey, there's this rule that's out of date. This is insane. Something that the mayor has done himself for a long time. And then when I brought it up, he stopped doing it. But you shouldn't have to stop. You should be able to change the rules. She's talking about it's important to bring this up because it's been 15 years. That's called narrative. She's building the narrative.
Thank you. Anyone else that wants to comment on this ordinance change for Chapter 30?
Jeff Messer, city resident. I would like to thank Commissioner Pradel for moving this item from the consent agenda to the regular agenda because he's concerned about the public's ability to know about the city changing its local laws. I think I've done this before, removed ordinance changes for first reading from the consent agenda to the regular agenda. And I would like to suggest that maybe Commissioner Pradel suggests to the rest of the commission that there are certain items that automatically appear on the regular agenda. I don't know what the criteria for all those are. Certainly the final vote on ordinance changes is on the regular agenda. But I would like to suggest to Commissioner Pradel that maybe he ask the commission to change their bylaws or whatever so that all first readings of city ordinance amendments appear on the regular agenda rather than the consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no more comments, the recommended action is a motion to adopt this resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Hess. Support. Supported by Commissioner Pradel. Any other discussion? Clerk Borland, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Decker,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess, Commissioner Hoffman,
Yes.
Commissioner Juarez,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cooney,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. Thank you, Clerk Borling and Commissioners. The item is adopted. Next, reports and legislation. City Manager Ritzman, do you have a report?
Yes, I have a few items here. First, we noted earlier that how well Director Baker does in knowledge of his profession and the projects that he undertakes and his staff. There's also someone on my staff too that is kind of behind the scenes, good governance, and that's our Chief Finance Officer, Steve Asensi, who's here this evening, sitting in the back, waiting if there were any questions on any of the bond resolutions. And just want to recognize him and the hard work that he's done and his staff, which is really working with attorneys and financial advisors. And it's not glamorous work, but it's certainly important to get everything to the point that it comes to your agenda this evening. Second, I just want to draw your attention to the quarterly report from the Odor Task Force. That is in the agenda this evening. There won't be a staff presentation, but the agenda item, it will also be on the city's website for information for the public on the Odor Task Force that's meeting. And lastly, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and Kalamazoo County Health Department have updated their mask guidance for the state and for the county. And the new guidance states that we are in a post-surge recovery phase, and they have dropped the public health advisory on masking in most indoor public settings. As you recall, at the end of last year, the City Commission adopted a rule for itself and the boards and commissions requiring masks at public meetings. Just want you to know that the City Manager's Office and City Attorney's Office are reviewing this updated guidance from the state, and we will be prepared to bring a recommendation forward based on that guidance at the next meeting on March 7th. So, almost there. That's it, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Manager Ritzman. I appreciate it. Anything else, Attorney Robinson, for reports? No? Anything, Clerk Barley?
No, sir.
Thank you. So at this time, we will hear from any commissioners who wish to make comments. Let's start over on this side this time. Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I would just like to thank everyone that called in or spoke today and voiced their concern or support of what is going on within the city of Kalamazoo and our community. I definitely want to thank Mr. Kushner, Jane Goosh, for giving us that information in the presentations, Director Baker and Director Kick for also giving us good knowledge on things that are happening within the city that they have been working on. Kind of what Commissioner Prado said is we had a great informational retreat on Saturday. And the commission really got to talk about things and see how we want to continue to move the city of Kalamazoo forward. We got to hear about the great opportunities, the great investments, the great projects that our city staff have been working on for quite some time. And also what I hear the same thing over again is about the transparency and the communication. And I believe that coming soon, there will be a lot more communication regarding things that are happening within the city so we can keep our citizens informed. Because, an informed community is a great community. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be part of the 54th Commission. I'm glad to be able to be someone that can help make a change in our community. And again, I'm echoing what Commissioner Prado says. We have to think about the future and the future of the city of Kalamazoo and the future for our children and how it's going to be when they grow up and we're long gone and we are also bouncing our grandkids. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening to everybody here online and in the chambers. A couple of things I just want to bring up. We are very new, three of us are very new to this work, and so you may see me and I'm observing, I'm listening, I'm trying to really be intentional about my words as I'm in this learning mode. With that said, Vice Mayor Cooney and myself will be doing listening sessions along with the other commissioners. And our first one will be March 18th at NACD. It will happen at 6 o'clock. And what we want to do is just show the community that we're here, we're listening, we're open, and we want to make change. And then I believe that we have a lot of work to do, and we're primed to do it together, though. We don't want to just lead from a dais. We want to be in the community and do this work together. And here's the other piece. It is okay for us to agree to disagree sometimes. And there is information that will need to be put out publicly, and there are other things that will need to be done for the greater good. So be patient with us as we continue to do this work and learn. When it doesn't work, doesn't mean it's a failure. It's a lesson learned. So let's keep that in mind. There's never a failure, always a lesson learned. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yeah, I have two things. Well, first of all, I want to reinforce what Commissioner Hoffman said. Ben, this is a response to what you were talking about. We're recognizing that it's difficult for people to come down here. So we're going to them. And we're going to sit in their wherever they are. The first one's at Northside Association of Community Development, just to be there and listen so that we can just hear what people's concerns are and see what we can do about that. So that's the first thing I want to mention. Second thing I want to mention is that this is Black History Month, and today, 57 years ago today, Malcolm X was assassinated in front of his family. His death is still under a cloud. Just over the past year, 2 people who spent more than 40 years in prison were exonerated, and who was involved in his murder is still not settled. At the time of his death, Malcolm X was in an interesting part in his life. He was only 39 years old. He was moving much closer to Dr. Martin Luther King. He had become politically involved where he had not been politically involved before, and he was advocating for voting rights. For me, Malcolm X is a model for a number of different things. One, his affirmation of the dignity of each person. He wanted black men especially to recognize that at a time when they were so dehumanized. Secondly, his courage. He had enormous courage. And thirdly, his authenticity. He was willing to look at his life and be ready to change when he saw what was real, what was true. His whole life was a search for truth. And there have been a lot of great books come out over the past year on Malcolm X, and I would just recommend one of them, and it's called The Sword and the Shield by a man named Peniel Joseph, in which he looks at Martin Luther King, he looks at Malcolm X, and he shows what each of them, their lives was about and how they had contributed to society.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Hess? Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Commissioner Pradle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, just wanted to kind of recap from our 7-hour or so retreat we had this Saturday. We heard some presentations, primarily from some of the folks who lead our various departments and areas of the city. You know, I just left that just feeling very lucky. You know, we have some of the best and brightest people doing governmental work that work for the city of Kalamazoo. You know, I guess if there's any people from media watching, you know, Director Kitt gave a presentation about all the different ways that we're, you know, honing in on different new and innovative and strategies on housing. You know, write about it. You know, I mean, there might be 9 different articles you could write about the 9 different strategies just specific to housing. And, you know, if we're trying to think about what readers want to read about, we already surveyed the community and they told us the top 5 priorities, and pretty much the whole retreat was about addressing the first group of priorities. So we've already done the work for you to figure out what the community cares about. So, you know, let's talk about some of that too. So I guess it's a challenge. Second part is if you've been following this at all, and I hope you are, but if you haven't, Senator McCann and Representative Rogers both introduced Senate Bill 813 and House Bill 5661. Right now, there's an ongoing man-made ecological emergency happening in the Kalamazoo River. Their bill, basically what it aims to do is to hold companies that cause damage on inland water bodies to be held accountable. And I guess it was, I can't even remember, it was a while ago, we as a commission passed a resolution, you know, asking them to act and make right the mistake they made. In October 2019, the owner of the dam lowered the level without the correct permissions to make repairs to the dam gates. When they did so, 400,000 cubic yards of sediment were released into the Kalamazoo River, causing irreparable damage to the ecology of the river, both plant, wildlife, you name it. We heard a number of updates from the company stating that they were going to make corrective actions, act on behalf of the river. which they did to a minutia level, and then sort of just kind of skated away. And the reality is that's not acceptable because A, it's not the right thing to do. If we make a mess, we clean it up. And when we promise we're going to do something, we follow through and do what we said we're going to do. And I think that's the standard that we need to hold people to. And people will say, well, you know, what does the power of the city commission have to do with this? You know, this should be left on the House and Senate to resolve these. And it's absolutely true. I guess what I'm going to say is that Commissioner Hess and I were talking about this. We're going to try to prepare a letter to bring forward to the next commission to send on our behalf to the committees that are hearing these possible pieces of legislation that would hold companies accountable to make right and give the regulatory bodies more power to force them to do so in these kind of situations. So I just wanted to give you a preview and let you know that we're hoping to bring that to the next commission meeting. We would ask for your support to do that so that we could send those to those committees and the bodies that are considering possibly moving forward that legislation. And we also need to keep talking about it because even though we might not have any concrete power here locally to hold them accountable, you know, that river rolls through the heart of our community, and I would like to keep making them uncomfortable and keep bringing it up. So until actions are made and they improve and remediate the issues they cause, people might think, well, you know, I don't even see this. Is this really a big deal? Maybe it's just because there's low water levels. Absolutely not. I took a boat ride with one of the people from the Kalamazoo River Alliance with at the time, Chair Tracy Hall, to go check out the dam. I mean, dead turtle floating around. There was a gentleman that was, I think, like waist or shoulder high in the muck and just happened to have golfers over by Red Arrow Golf Course hear him screaming and probably could have died. It is extremely dangerous for people who are going down the river, and if there were to ever be a, God forbid, you know, see Chief in the audience, if there would be an emergency, you know, what if we needed to act to get somebody out of the river quickly? You know, I mean, it's not safe, and it was a man-made disaster that could have been prevented. So anyway, so that's to come, and I'd encourage people to also write to the Senate and the House to ask for that to happen. And again, hoping to bring that next meeting as well. So appreciate everybody's time on Saturday. It was good to spend time with everybody in the commission and with city staff. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Prado. Commissioner Juarez.
It feels good to go second to last, and not first. So I was getting ready to just chuck my mask out when Manager Richmond was talking about, you know, changing the ordinance and being able to change that. But what I want to talk about is some of the stuff we've been working on, right, behind the scenes with gun violence, the group of individuals who've been meeting every Monday at lunch, talking about gun violence, adding more people to that conversation who need to be at the table. You know, the group of people who are convening to talk about the youth development stuff every other week. And, you know, Don's pushing for us to do that every week because it's super important. And being at those meetings kind of just allows me to have a viewpoint of looking how disunified our city is when it comes to nonprofit, city, churches, businesses, and residents doing the work together. There's a lot of trust issues. And we've heard that time and time again. We've seen that. And you guys have heard me say, you know, we as a city have to take responsibility for our part in that. And just taking that standpoint of humility is super important. And I hope that that could be an example for other people to take responsibility in their part. The only way this city is ever going to heal and move forward is when we come together and understand we have more in common than we don't. When we can clean the table and start from a point of working together to make a difference, that's when we'll start to see like true generational transformation. Because that's my heart, is to see true generational transformation. I always tell people what I do today affects today, but it's for 20, 30, 40 years down the line. I want to be able to create and help create and cultivate a Kalamazoo where my children can thrive in and their children can thrive in. But what I've realized and what I've come to realize is that there is a lot of work for us to do. And if we become more intentional about building relationships, instead of focusing on the one thing I did wrong and celebrating with me the 100 things I did right, I think we can move Kalamazoo further down the line. And we have such an opportunity to do that, to humanize each other, to look at each other as brothers and sisters and really work on making a difference. Now, I believe that with all my heart, that Kalamazoo can be different. People can change. And I think part of what we're seeing is that happening. You know, you see the chief of police and Deputy Chief Boyson and Chief Coakley talk about certain things that are difficult to talk about when it comes to how they've been doing policing for the last 50 years. But to see the chief's heart and say, man, I really want to see my community different. I want to see my community safe and thriving. When he says that, I believe him with all my heart. Because he doesn't have to choose to say that. He doesn't have to choose to change the way they do policing. And for us, I think as a community, we need to be more attentive to that. We need to stop pointing the fingers at each other and start working with each other. We need to start caring for each other. I mean, Commissioner Hoffman said this a couple meetings ago. When we make each other a priority, man, just imagine what can happen. And so I just appreciate that all the people that are doing good work, all the people that are doing, you know, the work on the ground with families that are experiencing devastation because of COVID or whatever it is. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the churches that are caring for people and loving on people, right? I appreciate the businesses that give jobs to people. Collectively, we got to unify. Like, at the end of the day, we have to unify what we're doing. It's super important. We need each other. We can't continue to act like we don't. We can't continue to ignore the fact that we need each other. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Juarez. I want to let those words resonate. I just do want to say a couple quick things. I am very grateful for the great city team we have here. Manager Ritzma, not just the folks who spent this evening tonight with us in the room and do the great work, but everyone who's employed by the city of Kalamazoo and gets out and tries to turn a vision into reality every day. So thank you. Really appreciate working with the city team and appreciate working with this commission, and our other appointees are with us here tonight. It's a pleasure serving the city together. Thank you. I love you, Kalamazoo. We are adjourned.